When VHS swept into living rooms and turned horror into a rental store staple, it seemed as though every fright film, no matter how obscure, would find a second life on tape. But hidden within that booming marketplace were titles that slipped in and out of existence with unsettling quiet. They weren't censored, condemned, or embroiled in controversy. Instead, they were simply withdrawn, erased from shelves without a statement or a trace, as if someone decided their presence should be temporary. Tonight, we revisit those disappearances. 15 horror films whose VHS releases flickered briefly before being pulled back into the shadows, mysterious absences that collectors still struggle to explain, and gaps in the home video era that were never meant to be illuminated. Fact 1. The outing, the lamp confusion loop. Nowhere is the VHS era's capacity for self-inflicted chaos more evident than in the dual identity of the outing and its alternate title, The Lamp. What should have been a routine retitling instead fractured the film's home video presence beyond recognition. Some distributors shipped tapes labeled The Outing that actually contained the shorter lamp cut. Others released The Lamp with content matching the longer edit associated with The Outing. The two versions circulated simultaneously without consistent cataloging, each undermining the clarity of the other. This overlap created a labyrinth of mislabeled stock. Retailers reported receiving tapes with conflicting runtimes, mismatched artwork, and catalog numbers that bore no resemblance to official listings. In the absence of standardized masters or clear documentation, distributors quietly phased out both versions rather than attempt to correct the mounting confusion. The consequence is a VHS lineage so muddled that collectors still debate which edition represents the film as intended. Each surviving tape feels like a contradictory fragment of a release that never coalesced into a single, authoritative form. As a result, the film's dual identity remains one of the format's most memorable anomalies, an example of how a single title can splinter into chaos, ultimately erasing its own foothold in the home video market. Fact 2. The Forest, 1982. Despite its unassuming nature, The Forest should have been a textbook addition to the early VHS catalog. It had aired on television, played regionally in theaters, and held clear appeal for rental audiences. Yet its home video life collapsed almost immediately. Some stores received clamshell editions with artwork that looked improvised or unaligned with any of the film's official posters. Others received tapes with degraded visuals full of heavy grain, starkly different from the cleaner prints used for broadcast. Further complicating matters were unexpected content variations. Several editions include scenes absent from the more widely known version, hinting that early assembly cuts or alternate edits were pressed onto tape without oversight. When retailers attempted to reorder the title, they encountered vague references to unresolved licensing matters, phrasing that often signals a conflict between overlapping rights holders. Collectors now believe the issue stemmed from the film's complex distribution lineage. With multiple entities involved in financing and regional sales, determining who held definitive authority over the home video version may have been more complicated than anticipated. Rather than risk legal entanglements, distributors appear to have withdrawn the title quietly. In the aftermath, The Forest survives as a scattered set of mismatched tapes, evidence of a release undone by conflicting claims, and an absence of clear ownership. Fact 3. Hellgate 1989. Hellgate remains one of the most confounding VHS artifacts of its era, a release that seemed to splinter into multiple incompatible versions before abruptly fading from circulation. Promotional material positioned it as a straightforward genre offering, yet the tapes that emerged bore few signs of a coordinated rollout. Some U.S. editions suffer from pale, unbalanced transfers that shift unpredictably in tone, suggesting the master was never fully prepared for duplication. European variants introduce even more confusion with an alternate opening sequence that doesn't appear in any domestic cut. Adding to the puzzle are tapes found with handwritten labels, an unmistakable indication of items never intended for consumer shelves. Their presence implies that internal review copies or provisional masters might have slipped into circulation due to procedural errors or disorganized cataloging. Even the artwork varied massively between editions. Some covers displayed stylized neon imagery, while others looked like early drafts or placeholders. For years, collectors have speculated that disputes over rights or distribution territories may have hindered the film's release. Such turmoil could easily explain the absence of a unified master and the uneven availability of the tape. Whatever the cause, the result was a patchwork of mismatched editions that gave Hellgate a VHS identity defined more by inconsistency than intention. Today, its home video legacy stands as a collage of contradictory fragments, a release that flickered unevenly across markets before receding into obscurity. Fact 4. The Dark 1979. The Dark appeared to be on track for a strong VHS debut, promoted alongside other mainstream horror titles and included in early ordering cycles for rental stores. But when shipments finally rolled out, the film itself was nowhere to be found. Distributors offered only vague assurances, postponements with no follow-up, shifting release windows that never solidified until the film quietly vanished from catalogs altogether. A handful of tapes believed to come from test batches reveal a release that may never have reached full production. These editions feature soft, unstable transfers, with color fluctuations and audio distortions that differ from later television broadcasts. Perhaps most mysterious is the presence of an unfamiliar distributor logo at the opening, one not tied to any officially registered company. Such details suggest the tapes were sourced from provisional materials rather than a finalized master intended for wide release. Rumors surrounding the film's turbulent production history, rewrites, reshoots, and creative turnover raise the possibility that unresolved rights questions forced the distributor to abandon the project before it reached retail shelves. With no official explanation, the release simply faded, leaving only a few stray tapes to hint at what might have been. As a result, The Dark stands as one of the VHS era's strangest near releases. Widely advertised, scarcely distributed, and quickly lost to a silence that collectors have spent decades trying to interpret. Fact 5. The Severed Arm, 1973. Although The Severed Arm predates the videotape era, it entered early VHS catalogs looking like a natural fit for home video. Years of television syndication had familiarized audiences with the film, and its rights situation seemed uncomplicated, at least on the surface. But the tape's journey quickly grew tangled. One distributor initiated a release, only to halt shipments before copies were widely delivered. Another attempted to take over, producing tapes with off-model artwork, murky transfers, and title cards that deviated drastically from any known version of the movie. Listing inconsistencies only added to the confusion. Some catalogs referred to the film under truncated titles. Others listed it as The Dismembered or The Arm, despite the absence of any corresponding official edit. Runtime disparities between copies suggest that multiple, partially complete masters may have been used in duplication. Collectors widely believe the film's broadcast history fractured its ownership trail. Different stations aired different edits, and over time, various entities may have assumed they possessed the rights to distribute their respective versions. When these overlapping claims became apparent, withdrawing the tape quietly would have been the simplest solution. In its wake, The Severed Arm left behind a scattering of mismatched VHS editions, each one a relic of a release that quickly dissolved under the weight of confusion and conflicting provenance. Fact 6. Fatal Games, 1984. Fatal Games seemed like a film destined for the rental boom, an athletic-themed slasher with a marketable hook and the kind of modest production values common among VHS staples. But instead of circulating widely, its release was curiously short-lived. Retailers attempting to secure copies encountered shifting explanations. The title was back-ordered, then delayed, then quietly marked inactive without further comment. It was as if the distributor were stepping away from the release without ever acknowledging the decision. Surviving tapes reveal a strangely inconsistent transfer. Some copies are so underlit that entire sequences appear swallowed in darkness, suggesting the duplication came from a print several generations removed from the original. Others omit scenes present in television airings, hinting at the use of alternate or incomplete masters. To make matters stranger, certain editions contain closing credits that appear borrowed from unrelated films, an error that could only stem from a rushed or disorganized assembly process. Collectors have speculated that Fatal Games may have fallen into a rights tangle, potentially involving international partners or conflicting claims over distribution territories. While no definitive evidence has surfaced, the erratic withdrawal aligns with whispers of ownership ambiguity. The film ultimately slipped out of circulation almost as soon as it arrived, leaving behind a small collection of tapes that feel more like production oddities than polished releases. Physical reminders of a distribution rollout that unraveled quietly behind the scenes. Fact 7. The Suckling, 1990. The Suckling, notorious for its bizarre creature effects and uncompromising tone, experienced one of the VHS era's shortest-lived releases. Distributed through a small outfit specializing in exploitation cinema, the tape appeared briefly in independent rental stores before vanishing almost immediately. There was no recall, no announcement, only the sudden removal of the title from reorder channels. Existing tapes reveal signs of an irregular duplication process. Some versions contain severe audio warping, while others feature an alternate ending believed to have existed only in early festival cuts. The differences between copies are so pronounced that it's clear more than one version of the film reached the public, possibly due to distributors relying on early or unpolished masters. Packaging inconsistencies add another layer of mystery. Many covers appear to be hand-drawn or assembled using low-quality printing methods, and some editions list the film under an alternate title, Sewage Baby. This rebranding, whether an experimental marketing strategy or a result of miscommunication, only deepened the confusion surrounding the release. Because no single narrative explains the tape's abrupt disappearance, theories range from financial distress within the distributing company to uncertainties over rights ownership. Whatever the cause, The Suckling remains a standout example of a VHS release undone by its own inconsistencies, leaving behind only a scattered assortment of flawed and conflicting tapes. Fact 8. Dark August, 1976. The VHS history of Dark August unfolded quietly, almost as if the release were never meant to draw attention. A small boutique label took on distribution, though the film's tone and style didn't quite align with their usual offerings. Whether due to this mismatch or deeper logistical issues, shipments were so limited that many regional stores never saw a copy. Those that did often found the title disappearing from reorder lists within weeks. The tapes themselves reflect an uneven and rushed process. Some feature cover designs built from imagery unrelated to the film, likely pulled from stock art or placeholder layouts. Others use font styles and color schemes inconsistent with the distributor's branding, suggesting that packaging was assembled hastily or without formal oversight. Video quality across editions shifts sharply, moments of clarity suddenly giving way to murky or grain-heavy sections indicating that more than one master source was used. Years after the fact, the filmmakers expressed surprise at the tape's existence, hinting that distribution may have occurred partially or entirely without their knowledge. This revelation adds weight to theories that the release may have stemmed from unauthorized rights, transfers, or incomplete licensing agreements. As a result, Dark August survives today, not as a stable VHS title but as a fragmented artifact evidence of a release shaped by rushed decisions and obscured by incomplete documentation. Fact 9. Don't Go in the Woods, 1981. The VHS release of Don't Go in the Woods became a showcase of just how chaotic early home video distribution could be. Though marketed alongside other low-budget slashers, the versions that reached rental shops rarely resembled one another. Some tapes bore the alternate title The Woods Are Calling, presenting themselves as if they belonged to an entirely different film. Others opened with production cards that looked hastily spliced in, hinting at incomplete or mismatched source materials. The artwork surrounding many editions deepened the confusion. Numerous copies featured imagery, obviously taken from unrelated horror titles, creating the impression that distributors were either reusing outdated templates or scrambling to assemble packaging with whatever assets they had on hand. Runtimes varied dramatically between editions, fueling theories that distributors relied on multiple cuts, some unfinished, some truncated to fulfill their VHS orders. The situation grew even stranger when certain stores reported unofficial instructions to discontinue renting the tape. No controversy surrounded the title, and no public statement followed. It simply became unavailable, creating scarcity where there should have been abundance. Today, collectors view the surviving tapes as an archive of contradictions. Not one variant reflects a definitive edition. Instead, Don't Go in the Woods lingers as a splintered release, a tape defined not by a single version, but by the inconsistencies that ultimately pushed it into obscurity. Fakt 10. Winterbeast, 1992. Winterbeast has long occupied a strange, liminal place in VHS history. Part confirmed release, part whispered rumor. Unlike most tapes of its era, it lacks a definitive distribution trail. Instead, collectors have unearthed a patchwork of editions, many adorned with plain white labels that resemble internal screeners rather than commercial products. No consistent catalog entries tie these tapes to an official distributor, deepening suspicions that they may have been duplicated outside traditional channels. The transfers only intensify the ambiguity. Some contain abrupt tonal shifts, fragmented editing, or jarring color imbalances that do not appear in later restorations of the movie. These anomalies suggest that early assembly cuts, possibly incomplete or provisional, found their way into circulation. Others speculate that an unauthorized master leaked, resulting in a batch of tapes duplicated with no oversight from the filmmakers. Conflicting accounts from the production team further complicate matters. Some recall that a home video release was discussed, while others insist no final agreement was ever reached. Because neither side offers definitive proof, the truth remains suspended between fractured memories and the tapes themselves. As a result, Winterbeast has become a staple of VHS myth-making, a film whose home video existence feels more like an accident or a misunderstanding than a deliberate distribution effort, leaving collectors to debate whether the release was ever meant to happen at all. Fact 11. The Dark Power, 1985. On paper, The Dark Power appeared poised for a lively VHS future. It featured a recognizable lead actor and a bizarre supernatural Western angle that should have given it longevity in rental shops. Yet the film's actual release was marked by an array of inconsistencies that suggested something went awry behind the curtain. While distribution lists included the title, many retailers found their orders either partially fulfilled or not fulfilled at all, with no satisfactory explanation from suppliers. Collectors who managed to secure tapes found themselves confronted with editions that varied widely in presentation. Some arrived packaged in oversized plastic shells lacking proper branding. Others bore transfers that seemed sourced from incomplete materials, with sudden audio dips, strange echo effects, or opening logos belonging to companies with no documented connection to the film. These qualities give the impression of a release pieced together in haste, or possibly produced without full authorization. Further adding to the enigma are internal notes from a defunct rental chain that flagged the title as prohibited from reordering, a phrase typically used in cases of uncertain ownership. Yet no public legal disputes or rights conflicts ever surfaced to explain such a restriction. Today, The Dark Power stands as a quintessential VHS anomaly released just enough to leave a trace, but never fully established, as though it slipped out of the duplication line before anyone could decide whether it was truly meant to be there. Fact 12. Terror at 10 Killer, 1986. Terror at 10 Killer drifted into the VHS marketplace with barely a ripple, and its exit was just as understated. While distributors initially grouped it alongside other direct-to-video thrillers, many retailers found themselves receiving inconsistent information. Some were told shipments were delayed, others that the title wasn't being carried anymore, and a few claimed they never received their first order at all. Its presence felt more like a temporary glitch than a formal release. The tapes that remain provide little clarity. Some editions carry artwork that appears hastily assembled, with mismatched fonts and catalog numbers that don't correspond to any recognizable distributor records. Others list mailing addresses for companies that, based on public records, seem never to have existed. Adding to the confusion, runtimes differ from copy to copy, hinting at multiple edits being used simultaneously without official documentation. What deepens the mystery is how blindsided members of the production team were by the film's abrupt disappearance. They later admitted they had no knowledge of the title being pulled and believed it would follow a standard home video trajectory. This disconnect implies that the decision to halt distribution may have stemmed from administrative or contractual issues unknown to the filmmakers. With no coherent narrative to explain its vanishing act, Terror at 10 Killer has settled into VHS folklore as a tape that seemed to wink into existence briefly before dissolving, leaving behind a trail of conflicting versions that only cloud the truth further. Fact 13. The Children, 1980. Though The Children enjoyed a small but steady legacy through cable airings and grindhouse showings, its VHS story is marked by a strangely brief presence. A modest distribution label handled the tape, but it vanished from availability at a pace so quick that many stores were unaware it had ever been released. Any attempts to reorder were met with the same opaque refusal. The title was no longer being distributed, with no supporting explanation. The tapes that do remain offer a mosaic of inconsistencies. Some versions show noticeably altered color timing, giving the film a washed or overly saturated appearance. Others feature audio mixes that drift from theatrical and television versions. A particularly puzzling variant includes an intro logo from a distributor that appears in no verifiable registry, raising suspicions that transfers of uncertain origin were pressed into circulation. These irregularities have prevented archivists from establishing a single authoritative VHS edition. The film's path into home video is traceable, but its withdrawal and the scattered, contradictory traces left behind make it difficult to piece together what actually happened. For a film widely remembered by genre fans, The Children's quiet removal from VHS stands as one of the era's most perplexing gaps, a disappearance that unfolded without urgency and without answers. Fact 14. Blood Frenzy 1987. Among collectors of obscure slashers, Blood Frenzy has become emblematic of a release that unraveled almost as soon as it began. Though Prism Entertainment handled distribution, an outfit usually known for accessible releases, this tape never gained meaningful traction. Within a short time, whispers of a behind-the-scenes recall circulated, yet no public statement ever confirmed it, leaving retailers with a title that had been silently shut off. Surviving tapes reveal the marks of a production that may not have been fully ready for duplication. Some boxes use blurry, low-grade artwork as though printed from unfinished designs. The video transfers themselves often include noticeable flaws, dropped audio, color shifts, and frames that appear to have been lifted from damaged or incomplete source material. These inconsistencies suggest a release assembled too quickly or without access to the proper elements. Despite clarity around the film's surviving materials, Blood Frenzy has never resurfaced in any restored or official format. The reasons behind its vanishing remain opaque, with no documented legal troubles or production issues to point to. Instead, its disappearance feels like a quiet administrative decision, one that effectively erased a slasher from the rental era before most viewers even knew it had arrived. Fact 15. Demon Rage 1982. When Demon Rage slipped into the VHS market, its release carried an unusual sense of disorder, one that set it apart even from other low-budget genre films of the era. Shops reported receiving copies that looked as though they came from entirely different campaigns. Some packaged like a traditional supernatural thriller, others presented with artwork that leaned into the film's more sensual undertones. The absence of a consistent identity suggested a rollout assembled without a clear direction, or perhaps without anyone fully overseeing the final presentation. The tapes themselves reflected the same instability. Certain editions begin abruptly, skipping past the original credit sequence altogether, while others open with distributor cards belonging to companies that leave no trace in verified records. Visual and audio inconsistencies across surviving copies, muted colors, sudden shifts in clarity, or slight runtime differences imply that multiple masters were used, some of which may have been incomplete or never meant for commercial release. Just as quickly as it appeared, the film vanished from distributor lists. Stores trying to restock found the title already marked unavailable, with no recall no explanation, and no documentation to clarify why it had been pulled. Whether the decision stemmed from classification concerns, internal disputes, or simple administrative indifference remains unknown. In the end, Demon Rage became one of the quieter absences in VHS history. A release that never settled into a stable form before dissolving altogether, leaving behind only a scattering of mismatched tapes hinting at what the intended version might have been. Bonus pick: Boarding House 1982. Boarding House has long occupied a chaotic niche in the history of early shot-on video horror. A film whose VHS footprint fractured into so many unpredictable variations that pinning down a definitive edition remains nearly rupist impossible. From the outset, the release showed signs of disorder. Some tapes arrived in neon-soaked packaging that looked like an experiment in stylized marketing, while others featured stark, minimalist artwork reminiscent of rough drafts. It was as if no two production batches followed the same design brief. The contents of the tapes only deepened the perplexity. Certain editions stretch close to 2 hours, containing elongated sequences and connective tissue absent from the film's known theatrical cut. Others run substantially shorter, riddled with abrupt edits, fluctuating audio, and moments that feel pulled from unfinished assemblies. The disparity suggests that distributors may have duplicated whatever materials were accessible at the time, whether polished or not. A handful of versions even appeared under an alternate title, House Guest from Hell, an unexpected variation with no clear paper trail. Whether it stemmed from an early marketing test, a miscommunication, or outright unauthorized duplication has never been confirmed. Adding to the mystery are the inconsistent catalog records. Some rental directories list the film prominently, while others omit it entirely or attach incorrect catalog numbers. These erratic traces paint the picture of a release that may never have stabilized before disappearing from circulation. Today, Boarding House persists less as a single VHS release and more as a collage of fractured identities, an example of how a film can splinter into multiple versions across the rental landscape only to vanish before any one of them becomes definitive. If these vanished VHS titles stirred something uneasy in you, remember they represent only a fraction of the films that slipped through the cracks of the home video era. Behind every missing tape lies another story quietly untold, another disappearance that left no explanation, another fragment of horror history swallowed by the dark. If you're ready to keep uncovering what the past tried to bury, the shadows will be waiting for you.